if you feel like you have to restrict a lot of foods to like make it through the day, there's an underlying issue. An elimination diet is never meant to be done forever. And something like a low FODMAP diet should not be done for more than like, I would say 8 weeks, like between 6 to like maybe 10 weeks, because it has been shown to reduce bacterial diversity overall, decrease levels of your good gut microbes that help your gut, build a healthy gut. So anytime we're restricting loads of foods, we're going to run into issues, higher risk of nutrient deficiencies, right? It's like if you're only eating 10 foods, you can't possibly be getting in everything that you need.
Welcome to the Mind and My Wellness podcast, your podcast for all things macros, movement, mindset, and everything in between. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Mind and My Wellness podcast. This is your host, Danny, and today's episode is a hot topic. I polled you guys and I asked you, which of these topics are you most interested in? And an overwhelming majority of you said bloating, which I can understand because I experienced bloating for so many years and I thought it was just normal. I thought that there were specific foods that I just couldn't eat anymore because they caused me to get bloated, but then I would still experience bloat. So it was just a constant battle for me. So I'm really excited to have Hannah Aylward on the podcast today when we dive into all things bloating and getting to the root cause of your bloating. Hannah Aylward is a certified holistic health coach, gut health specialist, and the founder of HAN, her functional nutrition practice, taking a root cause approach to repairing the gut for real. After struggling with her own chronic digestive issues for many years, Hannah dove headfirst into the latest in gut health research, seeking answers to her bloating, food sensitivities, and the pain she was experiencing. With her science-backed formula, Hannah has overcome her own digestive issues and helped hundreds of other women around the world do the same. So in today's episode, we dove into all things bloating, from what actually causes it to identifying what your specific symptoms are and what your treatment plan could be, and so much more. So I'm super excited to share this episode with you. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Hi, Hannah. Thanks so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you on the show today to talk all things bloating.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to jump in.
Of course. So let's dive right into it. I polled my audience. You cover a vast majority or a vast array of topics as it pertains to like gut health and food sensitivities, and all of which I'm so fascinated in. But I polled my audience to see what topic in particular they really wanted to learn more about. And it was overwhelmingly about bloating. And so I'm really excited because this is a topic that I had previously really struggled with bloating for years and years and years until I was able to really address like root causes and things like that. So I know a lot of women in particular do struggle with bloating, maybe don't even realize that they are struggling with bloating. So I'm excited to dive in today. And my first question for you is, what the heck causes bloating? And can we really identify it down to one thing, or is it, multiple things?
Yeah, great question. So, bloating, just for anyone that isn't super familiar, the biggest difference with is kind of how it feels in your body, right? So some people are like, I don't know if this is fat, like abdominal fat, or if it's bloating. Typically, you'll know if it's bloating. It kind of comes with like a gassiness, and it's almost like painful to the touch, like a hard feeling like you could almost stick a needle in and deflate the balloon, right? So just for anyone who's like on the edge of, do I have this? Am I struggling with this? That's kind of how you can know. And the reality is that there's many different underlying root causes to bloating. So it's very specific to each individual, but there are some kind of overarching main underlying causes that we see in a lot of clients. So we've helped like hundreds of clients over the years, and we've seen tons of different cases, and we kind of pick up on different patterns with people. But I would say 5 underlying main causes would be nervous system dysregulation, so kind of like existing in that fight or flight nervous system state, and we can get into detail there if we want to. Low digestive output. When I say digestive output, I just mean your digestive juices. This is what we use to actually break down our food. So stomach acid, pancreatic enzymes, and bile. These things help us break down our foods, assimilate the nutrients from our foods. If we have any like sluggishness or low stomach acid or anything here, we're gonna end up with bloating. Then we have like gut dysbiosis. So imbalances in our gut bacteria, huge underlying cause of big bloating. So usually if you're like, oh my gosh, after I eat, these more fibrous foods, I look 6 months pregnant with bloating. There's typically some dysbiosis there that we can address. Good news is you'll feel a million times better on the other side. So I struggled with digestive issues for years and years, and I had some underlying dysbiosis. And that kind of left me feeling like it didn't matter what I ate, right? I was eating healthy. I was like exercising. I was like, what is going on? Because I didn't really know the ins and outs of gut health. And then once I finally figured it out, it was like, oh, I've got this dysbiosis. And that's why it's like I'm eating an apple and I look 6 months pregnant. Like, what is up? Right.
Yeah.
So if you resonate with that, you're not alone. And then, so we've got low digestive output, we've got some dysbiosis, nervous system dysregulation, and then we've got just unsupported diet overall. I would say most people, especially your listeners, like these are people that have already adjusted their diets. They're more aware. They're eating more whole foods, right? So it's typically not the only cause that we kind of see with people, but it of course plays a role, right? High sugar, high alcohol, high ultra processed foods, that those can disrupt the gut microbiome and contribute to bloating. And then we have just certain gut infections. So like a parasitic infection or an H. pylori infection can cause a lot of bloating as well. So those are kind of the biggest things that we see causing bloating, which is also why it can feel kind of tricky sometimes, right? You're like, I've tried an elimination diet. I'm eating paleo. Like, what's going on? I'm still bloated, even though I'm eating all these good, healthy foods. So just know that if that's you, there's so much else that can be done.
Yeah, I struggled with gut dysbiosis and I also had H. pylori and
Yeah.
candida,
Yeah.
all the fun things. And it wasn't until I really started learning about it that I was able to kind of, work through it and really overcome some of the bloating I had. But I just remember I would be like Googling, like, how to stop bloating, foods that are causing bloating. And in my head, it was like, oh, I must be eating like one specific thing or, it's dairy. And I would just like rid out all of dairy and it would still come about. And it was really, identifying those. I love that you bring up the nervous system because I don't think that a lot of people realize how centrally connected the nervous system is to so many different functions in the body. Can you dive into that one a little bit more as it
Yeah.
pertains to bloating?
Absolutely. So I always say like digestion is a nervous system regulated process. And it's kind of digestion takes place north to south and it really starts in the brain. So there's so much talk about probiotics and the gut microbiome, right? It's kind of, these are like terms that people have heard of. But before food even makes it into the gut microbiome, like, or before we even go to get, bacteria there or whatever, we are starting the digestive process in our brain. So our nervous system is controlling the digestive process, really. So the nervous system has different responses. We've got the parasympathetic and the and the sympathetic nervous system response. Parasympathetic really being that rest and digest response. It's literally like termed rest and digest, right? So this is where we digest our food optimally. We want to be in this calm, relaxed nervous system state to actually properly digest our food. Many of us are kind of existing chronically in the sympathetic nervous system dominant state or that fight or flight state, that stressed out state. So if you're someone who's like eating quickly in front of the computer in between responding to emails, if you're like have a hard time settling down, if you feel like you're always go, 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 it's hard to quiet your mind, meditating never works, like things like that, we kind of know perfectionist type A, right? These are people that tend to have a hard time calming and settling the nervous system and more so existing in this fight or flight or sympathetic dominant state. And this is an issue because over time, this will cause gut issues, deeper gut issues, hormonal imbalances, et cetera, because we have to be in that parasympathetic state to properly repair and to properly digest our food. So when we're in that stressed out state, we're going to secrete fewer digestive juices. So stomach acid production is going to go down. Our gut motility is going to be impacted. Our gut immune function is going to decrease. Our intestinal, our intestinal lining cells are repairing all the time. They're like self-healing. That rate of self-healing is going to slow down when we're in that chronic stressed out state. So we're kind of setting the environment for candida overgrowth, dysbiosis, leaky gut, like these terms that people may have heard of. So it really because stress doesn't stay stress. So I always talk about this, like stress has physiological impacts on the body, right? So even though stress is a part of your story and it could have contributed to your digestive issues, we want to take like a two-pronged approach because over time, it's created these more physical issues like, leaky gut, like dysbiosis and things like that. So there is no gut repair without nervous system like regulation. And we need, through our gut is how we absorb all of our nutrients from our food, so if we have issues with gut function, that's then going to impact all these other places in the body too, and all these other functions, including our nervous system. So it really works both ways.
It is really amazing hearing you talk about that in terms of how it is connected. What are some, let's say somebody's coming to you and you can very clearly tell, like, okay, we have some nervous system work to do. Are there any, maybe like 2, 3 things that you always recommend somebody look into or implement into their lifestyle to help with that? Or is it kind of, bio individual?
Yeah, great question. There will always be a level of bio individuality to it, but I am a huge fan of breath work personally. Like breath work and meditation are great practices that you can bring into your day. Once you kind of get the hang of it, like it's free, you can do it anywhere. So I'm a big fan of that. We see people that are like nurses, they're like, running around all day. We see moms running after kids. So not everyone has like tons and tons of just like free time. I think that's one of the biggest barriers for people is they're like, that sounds nice, but when am I supposed to have the time for that? Right.
Yeah.
So it's like if we can learn some of these really simple tools that don't really cost us anything that we can just like implement on a daily basis, those I think have like the highest reward because you can actually do them. So,
Yeah.
5 minutes of breath work here and there, 5 minutes of meditation here and there, I think can be great to help kind of settle the nervous system. We're big fans of like mineral support on my team as well. So, magnesium and sodium and potassium, these are some of our macro minerals that the body requires much more of. And when we're under stress, like, our adrenals need sodium, our bodies just like burn through magnesium when we're stressed out. So repleting with a lot of these minerals can also help with energy production, support the nervous system, decrease cortisol levels. And then, I could give like a million tips because this is kind of everyone's like, breakdown.
Yeah.
Everyone's just really stressed. But balancing blood sugar is essential. Like you can't get off the stress hormone roller coaster without balancing your blood sugar because, to put it very simply, when your blood sugar levels go up very high, they're going to crash very low and you start kind of riding this roller coaster instead of like a nice gentle wave. And when they crash really low, your body's going to secrete cortisol to bring your blood sugar levels up. That's why we get sugar and carbohydrate cravings during that time. And that's also, when we kick off that cortisol, you're then going to be running on these stress hormones. So we really cannot do this nervous system regulation work if we're kind of riding this up and down roller coaster of our blood sugar levels because our body is kicking out cortisol to protect us, right? It's like blood glucose levels are too low. Let's, send out cortisol. So balancing blood sugar is like, I think something people don't really connect with like supporting your nervous system or your anxiety levels, but you really can't do one without the other.
Yeah. With breath work, personally, it has completely changed my life. And I had no idea how to do breath work a year ago. A little bit about me, my story, I started my business and I was extremely stressed. I went full time in my business. And as I was growing it, I was just working constantly, didn't know how to turn off everything that you're saying, like type A, perfectionist. That is me to a T. And so it really makes a lot of sense why I was experiencing a lot of the gut issues that I was having, also with the nervous system issues I was having. And when I started implementing breath work, that's when I was actually able to get my cycle regulated again. And then I was able to get pregnant. So it has been a huge component of my evolution as well with breath work. Is there any, if someone's listening, like, oh, how do I get into breath work or even, meditation? Do you have a specific app or YouTube channel that you really like and would recommend?
I love that. I love this story.
Yeah.
Breathwork has also completely changed my life. I think for, most of the women that come my way, I think resonate with me. So I understand, right? You always find that like you're helping people that are like you, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I understand the type A, the perfectionism. I run a business, it's so easily just completely nonstop. So this work was so game changing for me. Like I needed this work so badly. And breath work for me it's a bit easier than meditation because your brain can still kind of do something, right? So people that are really like, oh my gosh, I tried meditating and I just cannot do it.
Yeah.
I can't just sit there, right? It's like breath work, you can kind of count, 1,
Yeah.
2, 3, 4. It gives your mind something to kind of like focus on. So you still have to move energy. You still get to kind of enter that parasympathetic nervous system response, but it's almost like it feels easier for me or something. And then I tend to get a lot of like stuck energy in my body too. I got to like dance it out, run it out, walk it out. I got to like move it out. And breath work is such a great way to do that.
Yeah.
So I love that story. But let's see, apps. Insight Timer is a great app. I think it's still free. They have meditations, they have like guided visualizations, they have some breathwork practices. I lead my clients through breathwork inside of my program because it's had such an impact on me. But, I'm trying to think if I can give some like specific takeaways. So really what you want to focus on the most if you're brand new to it is just elongating your exhale. So if you can inhale through your nose and then have your exhale be longer than your inhale, you're kind of like getting things moving in the right direction because you're signaling to your brain, we've got enough oxygen. We're good. We can calm down here. We can settle here. Because think of when you're kind of in that fight or flight state, your breathing becomes really quick and short. You're kind of like, right? If you can elongate your exhale and go, hey, brain and body, like we've got plenty of air. We're calm. We've got more than enough. It helps to drop into that parasympathetic state, which is awesome. So you can really do that at your own pace. You can inhale for 3, exhale for 4, inhale for 5, exhale for 6, whatever kind of feels best for you. If you're brand new to it, it might feel a little like, whoa, I'm feeling a little dizzy. I'm feeling something going on here. So whatever's comfortable for you. And then over time, your capacity will increase too. So over time, you'll be able to inhale for 5, exhale for 8, right? But that's just a really quick hack that you can start doing tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, spending 3 minutes, inhaling for 4 and exhaling for 5, and you'll feel the difference.
I love that. Sometimes I think too, with me in particular, sometimes you don't even realize that you are running in fight or flight all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it really takes an awareness. So if you're listening and you're struggling with bloating or you do, occasionally feel like, oh my gosh, I'm just always, always, always on and doing things and whatnot, tap into that awareness and see how you can recognize when you are experiencing that, or if you're just constantly living that. And then, take that recommendation. I love that. Breathing and just implementing that. You can do it literally anywhere, which is absolutely amazing. It makes it so accessible and free. Awesome. Okay. So moving on to the second point that you had mentioned, just in terms of like stomach acid and all of that, can you dive in a little bit deeper there? Because that is something that I'm unfamiliar with. And I'd love to know more about how do you know if that is an issue, or is it typically when you're working with somebody, is it kind of a combination of a bunch of these different topics that are kind of playing into this bloating issue?
Yeah, beautiful question. I would say for most people, it's never just one cause. Like we're working with a bunch of things. Just like you mentioned, you're like, I had H. pylori, I had candida, I had the nervous system stuff. Like there's usually a nice combo effect of these things that's playing a role. Just because like your body's so resilient. I mean, your body is working for you all the time. So it can take years of stress. Like it can take years of this and that. I mean, we shouldn't give it years of that, but your body, it's really trying, So it's typically like a culmination of things building up over time. And that's really where a more functional practitioner, I have a team of functional registered dietitians, and we take a real thorough root cause approach, and it's really good for those chronic things that are developing over time, right? Versus the like emergency things where it's like, whoa, you need to go to the hospital. I think that's where functional nutrition and functional medicine really excels. But it's usually a combination of a few things. I mean, I had dysbiosis, I had low stomach acid, I had my gut immune function was like totally tanked. My nervous system was a mess. My cortisol was high. Like it was many things. Just the classic case of, hey, life got intense. And here you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, stomach acid it really helps us to break down our food, and it helps us specifically to break down protein. So if you are feeling like really heavy after eating like animal proteins or protein rich foods, maybe if you even have an aversion to animal protein, you're like, oh, I don't want to eat it. I can't eat it. If you feel like there's like a brick in your stomach right after eating, you get full very quickly, burping after meals, constipation, and then dysbiosis, right? Because we have to ask too, I like to say we take a root cause approach to a root cause approach. So even when it comes to dysbiosis, we're going, how did you end up here, right? What caused this? Was it the stress? Was it low stomach acid? Was it an infection? What else is going on here? So stomach acid is really necessary for breaking down our food. And it also helps to act as really the first chemical barrier that we have to the outside world. So your stomach acid is meant to be very acidic, should be able to like burn a hole in the floor. And your stomach's designed to hold this really acidic pH, which is why when it comes up your esophagus, like, and you have reflux, it's really painful because your esophagus is not designed to hold that acidity. And if you know, right? Like the heartburn feeling, the reflux, you're like, oh, this is awful. But it acts as the first chemical barrier. So it protects us from weird microbes riding inside, in along through our bodies, through the food that we're eating. So whether you get an apple from like Whole Foods or your farmer's market or whatever it might be. I mean, things are covered in microbes. We've got microbes all around us. And we're full of microbes. We kind of coexist with these things. But parasites and more opportunistic microbes, if they're making their way into our bodies through the food that we're eating. So we want to have nice, strong, resilient stomach acid production to kill these things off and help protect us from the outside world. We have like 70 to 80% of our immune system in our gut. And that's largely because we're taking the outside world and we're putting it inside of our bodies, and our immune system's there to really like protect us from anything that's not really supposed to be there, right? So our stomach acid also helps to kind of keep things in check there and also break down our food.
Okay. And when it comes to understanding if you have an issue with stomach acid, you mentioned a couple symptoms or side effects that can be pretty apparent, but through your practice, I'm just imagining people listening being like, well, how do I know that if that's my issue, or if this is my issue, or if, dysbiosis, what recommendations, like what first step do you recommend somebody take in terms of really identifying what the root cause or causes are of the bloating?
Yeah. So I think, the first line of kind of intervention is nutrition adjustments. So, if you're not ready to work with someone yet, or you're brand new to this, you're just like, I'm having bloating and I haven't really tried much. Start with the nutrition. I would say balance your blood sugar, take out these ultra processed foods, get in more whole foods, get in more polyphenols, fiber rich foods, see how you do. After that, most of our clients are kind of after that, right? They're like more advanced. They've done all of those things. Then I would consider, working with someone. We run functional stool testing to assess what's going on in the gut, what deeper imbalances are causing these symptoms. And that to me is, there's so much that can be done without testing, truly. Like there's no point in doing the testing if you're not doing the foundations, because you can't just throw supplements at like a rocky, shaky foundation. So it's really both things need to be present. We've got to be fueling enough. We've got to be eating, good foods and supporting the nervous system. But the testing just really helps like hyper speed the process, I would say, and go, okay, this is exactly what you've got going on. Now we know exactly what to target. Now we know how we can get you feeling better, versus like throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping it and seeing what sticks. You're like trying a probiotic. You're like, that didn't really do anything. You're trying an enzyme. You're like, that didn't really do anything. You buy L-glutamine. You're like, I don't even know. I don't notice anything. I think it helped maybe. And I think that's what people don't always understand, because we just like see ads for stuff and we're like, oh, I'll try this
100%.
supplement, and before you know it, you've spent like $500 on like random supplements and they're just sitting in your cabinet. Right. So when we know like what's going on with you, we can take your timeline of just guessing and compress it and kind of super speed results a bit. So working with someone, I think if you feel like you've tried the nutrition adjustments, you've taken out gluten, you've taken out dairy, you've taken out sugar, this is like very common. You've tried low FODMAP, you're like chronically bloated, you're like, what's going on? It's time for some deeper functional testing and working with someone who kind of knows what they're doing there.
I'm just kind of giggling because I have received messages from people like, what's your favorite greens powder? Because I have, some gut issues and I just want, to take the greens powder. And I'm like, greens powder, like, AG1, all of those are just so marketed right now, and supplements. And I love that you bring this up, because there's not a one size fits all approach with it. So yeah, I mean, what you're doing is so helpful for so many people, and really getting to the root cause of what they need, not just, what's marketed out there. In terms of the nutrition piece, so you mentioned, first step, really hone in on your nutrition, take out those processed foods. Yes. Balance blood sugar. Yes, I'm all about balancing blood sugar. But in terms of, you mentioned low FODMAP, are you a fan of some of the like elimination diets or more restrictive diets to really get to a root cause? And if so, which one do you really recommend, if there is one in particular?
Yeah, I would say overall, we don't love tons of restrictive diets for many reasons. I personally lived on an elimination diet for like a decade. So I get it. I think it helped me. I did it because I was told it would help. After doing a lot of research, I was like, this is it. Because the functional holistic space is so much like elimination diet. But it's never meant to be forever. And I like to always say like a robust, resilient gut microbiome can tolerate most foods. There might be like one or two things that don't really sit too well with you, or you're a little more gassy or whatever. but a nice, healthy gut microbiome can tolerate most foods, even if it's like a couple bites of something, right? Maybe you're like, oh, I can't eat a whole pint of ice cream, but I can have a few bites of ice cream and I'm fine. That's where we want most of our clients to get to. We see tons of people come to us on heavily restrictive diets. And like I said, I know it well because I've done it. I gripped onto it so hard because I think it did help me feel like 20% better. You know, it was helping a little bit and I felt like I was doing something good, but it still wasn't getting me all the way there. I was like, I'm eating so healthy. Like, what's going on? But I just see it causing a bit more damage than good for most people because then people are scared to eat a lot of foods. They'll come to us eating like 10 safe foods.
Right.
You know, and I'm like, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
And then that causes a lot of stress. I mean, I used to be so scared to eat out. I would like skip meals. I would bring my own snacks literally everywhere. I would look at every menu before I went. And there's nothing really like, you know, it's always nice to know, do they have healthy options? Like, is there going to be something yummy for me to get? That's fine. But the micromanaging in my life was next level. And that starts to really wear on your like psyche, on your mental health, you know? So basically, if you feel like you have to restrict a lot of foods to like make it through the day, there's an underlying issue. An elimination diet is never meant to be done forever. And something like a low FODMAP diet should not be done for more than like, I would say 8 weeks, like between 6 to like maybe 10 weeks, because it has been shown to reduce bacterial diversity overall, decrease levels of your good gut microbes that help your gut, you know, build a healthy gut. So anytime we're restricting loads of foods, we're going to run into issues, higher risk of nutrient deficiencies, right? It's like if you're only eating 10 foods, you can't possibly be getting in everything that you need. That's why you want a nice, diverse whole foods diet. But if you're reacting to lots of foods, or if you feel like you have a lot of food sensitivities are the result of underlying gut dysfunction. They're very typically not the cause. So food sensitivity testing has been shown to be highly inaccurate, varies, right? I like to harp on that because I just hate seeing people eating, you know, a few foods and thinking that that's going to do the trick. And our goal is always to get our clients eating more foods with as little pain as possible. And as someone who didn't eat gluten or dairy for like literally 10 years and now can, it'll change your life once you really get into your gut and address your underlying gut issues, you know, that are specific to you. So long-winded answer for just saying there are certain times to bring in more restrictive diets, always temporary, always meant to be temporary, never the actual issue. We always want to understand why you're reacting to those foods in the first place.
Yeah. I did a Candida diet for almost 5 months. And during that time, I mean, I knew it was short term. I was also in a place where I teach on, this non-restriction and whatnot and all of that. So it was a whole battle internally for me because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this Candida cleanse with, all these supplements. And I am very fortunate that I was in a mindset that I knew it was short term and then I worked my way out of it. But it is very challenging. And I can't imagine trying to do that forever and trying to live in that state. When it comes to really diving into some of the more specific foods, I know you mentioned that dairy and gluten were foods that you couldn't eat before, and now you're able to eat them again. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about how you were able to reintroduce those foods? Because I think there's a lot of messaging out there that's like gluten is just absolutely terrible. And that's a whole nother topic, but you should just never, ever, ever have gluten. So I'm really curious your opinion on reintroducing that at a certain point, and what point was that for you?
Yeah. Let's see. So I took all of these foods out to try to heal my gut, which doesn't work. So don't do that. Figure out what's going on deeper. But I was really just convinced, because you just read everything, right? You just are reading all of this and you're like, this is it. This is what's going to save me or change if I eat perfectly, it'll all go away. That was my messaging. If I eat perfectly, it'll all go away. And it never did. But we see tons of clients reacting to dairy just when they've got like a bunch of other stuff going on. Dysbiosis, low pancreatic enzyme secretion, parasitic infection, like tons of people with parasites can't tolerate dairy. And then we also see like more clinically, this might get a little sciencey for people, but low secretory IgA, meaning like low gut immune function, is correlated with more food sensitivities. So, and certain gut bacteria can cause you to react to certain foods too. So it's really like when we clean up the gut as a whole and kind of build strength in the gut, you can tolerate more foods. And it's not an overnight process. And I like to be very upfront about that. As you said, you were on this diet for like 5 months, right? Like repairing your gut at a root cause level will take, all of our programs start at 4 months. If not, they're like 6 months, 8 months, right? It takes a little bit of time. very worth it in my opinion. So it's not like I would just say, go jump into like a gallon of milk or something. But after we work to kind of clean everything up in the gut, we can typically see people just tolerate these foods better. So I started very slow and steady. And the gut's like a muscle, So when it comes to foods like certain like beans or fibers or veggies that you've been so afraid to eat, or like an apple, those tick a lot of people off. We just want to start slow and steady after we repair the underlying issue. So after we get rid of the dysbiosis, after we enhance gut function, start with just like a slice, 2 slices, and slowly build from there. So the gut's like a muscle, and it will start to rebuild these bacterial communities once you feed these bacteria. So like, you wouldn't go to the gym after not exercising for 5 years and like run a half marathon. You'd start with like a walk, and then you would slowly pick up like 5 pounds, and then you'd pick up a 10-pound weight over time. And that's how we want to treat your gut function as well. So don't jump into a basket of bread or something like that if you haven't touched bread for 10 years, right? That's not going to make you feel so good.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is to repair the underlying issue that's causing you to react like this. So after I cleaned up my dysbiosis and I supported my gut immune function and I enhanced my stomach acid, I could then tolerate dairy without reaction. It used to give me a big headache. It would cause a breakout. My stomach would kill me. So yeah, really slow and steady after addressing the underlying issue. And then for gluten, I would say that one's a bit more specific to the individual. So we can see if someone's immune system is reacting to it actively. And then of course, there's certain conditions like celiac or like someone with an autoimmune condition like Hashimoto's, I would recommend taking it out entirely. But our goal for the majority of people, that's not necessary unless you have another condition. So my goal is like, I don't want people eating tons of gluten all the time. Like my philosophy is I don't purchase anything with gluten. If I'm out to dinner, I'm not afraid to have some here and there and just like kind of enjoy it. So I still feel like I have tons of freedom. I'll go eat a burger. I'm not afraid to eat a burger at all.
Yeah.
With a regular bun, not a gluten-free bun. But it's like everything I buy is like, more whole foods and tends to be gluten-free.
Yeah. Oh, doesn't it feel so good to see like how far you've come when you look back at like old you and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm eating a bun with my burger. It feels so good.
Yeah.
I think it's really important that you also mentioned the timing of it, because it is not an overnight fix. And I mean, this goes for my coaching as well. And when you're looking for, body recomposition changes or fat loss, it is not something that's going to happen overnight if it's sustainable and if it's something that's going to last a long time. So in your experience, I think I already know the answer to this, but I would love to know on average, how long would you actually recommend somebody, who's like, okay, I need to dive into this. I really want to get to the root cause. I really want to solve this. How long is it going to take me?
Mm-hmm.
I know it's going to change person to person, but on average, what would you recommend, or what do you usually tell people?
Yeah, it's a good question. It is highly variable because we'll see people that have been struggling for like 15 years. And then we'll see people that have been struggling for like a year, So many things play a role. And I like to be very honest with that too, because I just want everyone, like I want to set true expectations, right, for everyone. But there's genetic factors, there's detoxification factors that come into this. There's also like how diligently will you actually follow the protocol, or like where are you in your life? We've got times in our life where it's like we can kind of really, really apply this work, and then we've got times in our life where it's like our best is 80%, and that's our best, and that's all you can do. And so we're very much like, I think people are shocked that we're not more restrictive or more intense, honestly. But I'm like, the best time is always now to do it. And you're going to travel, and you're going to, people are like getting married in my program and like buying homes in the program, like lots of big stressors, so, and big things where it's like, you can't just have everything go perfectly, but it's still going to get you farther than doing nothing, like way farther, so that might take someone a little bit longer if they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't take my supplements for like 2 weeks in the middle of this because like life got crazy. So it really depends on many things, but I would say like, give yourself 6 months, Some people are going to need a year. My group program is 4 months, and a lot of people will have their final session like a couple weeks after that, because we build out protocols in phases. And we're looking at, if you've got candida or something, like that's going to take a few months to get rid of. If you've got H. pylori, we're looking at like probably 10 weeks, so it'll take a little bit, but oh my gosh, your life is going to be a million times better on the other side.
Absolutely. Yeah. I really appreciate you coming on today and talking through all of everything that you've talked through, because I think it's such an important topic when we think of bloating. It's not just, to your point, I had an apple or I have to avoid this apple. It's really about getting to that root cause. So Hannah, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you have a free quiz. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
Yeah. So we have a free root cause assessment quiz that I develop. It's not diagnostic. So it's obviously not the same as getting testing done. You always want to get testing done, but in general, it'll have you answer some questions, and it's going to tell you an idea of what could be at the root of all of this. So like low stomach acid or dysbiosis or candida or liver gallbladder stuff, or like a combo. You're working with a combination of a few of these things. And then you'll get your answers. And I have like videos, educational content, next steps, recommendations, and all of that that accompany the quiz. So I'm super proud of it. It's a great resource for anyone who's really resonating with this. Like, oh my gosh, this girl, it sounds like me. Start with the quiz.
Which I'm sure is a lot of my listeners, because so many people were like, please tell me more about bloating. I'm experiencing bloating. So this episode hopefully is very helpful for you if you are like, yes, I have bloating regularly, and that's not normal. So thank you so much, Hannah. Where can my listeners find you?
Yes. So at my website, it's just going to be www.hannahaylward.com. We'll make sure you have it. My last name is like a little bit of a thing, but
I'll link it. I'll link it down in the show notes too.
Perfect. And then of course the quiz we'll make sure that you get. And then I'm very active on Instagram. So I do like weekly Q&As. I do live trainings. I'm like, don't hesitate to send me a DM. Tell me you listened to the episode. Like, more than happy to chat with you and get you some help. But if you just skim through my Instagram, it's like a textbook. So it's going to help. You'll find a lot of goodies in there. So,
Oh my gosh. I know. I was going through your Instagram and I'm just like, save, save. Like, all of these are so good. Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into this episode. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to follow along and catch all future episodes to help you look and feel like the best version of you. I'll see you in the next episode.